Hey guys, Ethys here. I hope you're all doing well and good. Before we get to today's video, I just wanted to update you on an exciting little project I'm working on. I've been entertaining the idea for a while of working with some shorter form content on the side. Snappy little videos, a minute or so in length, that are more approachable and easy to consume. So I thought that Amino's new stories feature looked pretty promising for the format, and was stoked to find a thriving Final Fantasy XIV community already on the app. So I've partnered up with Amino to experiment with a couple of initial ideas for something fresh and different, and if you guys are into it, we can keep pursuing it. My first story on the lore of Eden's Gate is already live, so if you search for Ethys in the app, you can give me a follow and check it out. You'll find a link for the app in the description below. While you're there, you should give the Final Fantasy XIV Amino a follow if you would like to, hold up a sec. What? No. No. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our discussion of the preliminary Shadowbringers Lorebombs. Today we're dropping Lorebomb number 2, the Calamities. For context, let's start again with what we thought we knew before Shadowbringers, and would have been speculating about in older videos. We believed that the cosmos had been sundered into 14 distinct worlds at some unrelatable prehistoric time, perhaps at the beginning of time itself, as a result of a conflict between the universal forces of light and darkness, which we know of as Hydaelyn and Zodiac. This event served to kill, dismember, imprison, or otherwise disempower Zodiac, the universal force of darkness, but for some reason, Hydaelyn survived unscathed and took her position as the consciousness at the heart of these 14 worlds. The world that we know of as Hydaelyn, and upon which the action of most of Final Fantasy XIV takes place, is in fact the Source, the original star from which the 13 other copies were carved and split in the Sundering. An ancient Zodiac cult known as the Ascians have forever sought to reverse the Sundering, believing that it will restore Zodiac through a process they describe as the rejoining. Basically, they would manipulate the people of the Source into going to war against one another, summoning primals, trying to channel the power of the sun into a focused area on the surface of the planet, and other foolhardy endeavors that would cause sufficient damage to the Source to force a reintegration of one of the shards. How? We didn't really know. But we had a couple of theories. First, that the rejoinings possibly served to basically prevent the Source from bleeding out after taking a sufficiently devastating hit in the form of a calamity, that Hydaelyn was forced to reintegrate the ether of a shard to keep the star from dying or reality from unspooling, and that the Ascians were gambling on the star's impulse for self-preservation to get what they wanted. Secondly, that perhaps the Calamities were just events catastrophic enough to punch a hole through the membrane surrounding our dimension and cause the rapid decompression of a shard on the other side. We knew that the Ascians operated on the shards as well as the Source, but we didn't really know why. Maybe it was simply to keep people under heel so Hydaelyn couldn't raise them up to threaten the Ascians' plans. Upon one of these shards, at least 5,000 years ago, the Ascians were a little too enthusiastic and inadvertently allowed a flood of darkness to transform it into the Void, a plane, as the name suggests, void of ether, except for the surviving denizens transformed into the warped Void Scent and forevermore seeking egress to other worlds in order to feed on precious ether. The condition of the Void means that it cannot be rejoined, although we never knew exactly why, and this has ever since proved a barrier to the Ascians' ultimate goal. Now, as with the previous video, not everything that we thought we knew has been shown false, but our understanding of the Calamities and the strange kind of science behind them is a lot more robust after 5.0. So what do we know now? The Sundering actually occurred 12,000 years ago, give or take. And there most certainly was a time before. The Sundering can still be thought of as the Final Fantasy XIV multiverse's Big Bang, but there was at least one world beforehand. We'll talk more about Hydaelyn, Zodiac, Amarot, and the Ascians in the next video. Since Zodiac had been summoned by the Ascians as the will of the star, Hydaelyn, in defeating him and shattering his spirit, also shattered the world, all of its ether and inhabitants into 14 shards. All the sundered souls took new forms and lives split across the shards with no memory of before, and history began anew for 14 distinct worlds. The only entities that survived with any memory of a pre-Sundered history were Hydaelyn herself, mother of this new multiverse, and 3 Ascians that had somehow escaped Sundering, we know not how: Lahabrea, Emet-Selch, and Elidibus. As they were tempered by Zodiac, they were consumed with a need to restore him, and to this end set upon their endless plot to rejoin the shards, uncaring for the millions of newborn post-Sundering lives that they would take in the process. Restore the shards, restore the scattered essence of Zodiac, resurrect him, and entreat him to bring back the Amratines sacrificed in his original summoning 12,000 years ago. Then, get back to the business of worshipping him and sacrificing more and more jabronis to feed his appetite. Again, we'll talk about the Ascians in greater depth next video. Their approach was initially rather experimental. Perhaps they thought that simply destroying each of the shards would serve to restore the source. In any case, they started with the 13th. Apparently, their method had something to do with manipulating the champions of Hydaelyn into the use of Auracite to combat primals, which eventually caused them to transform into the first insatiable monsters that would come to be known as Voidsent. One way or another, this led to the Flood of Darkness, a phenomenon which we now understand as constituting an over-aspecting of the entire shard's ether to the astral pole. This would have caused its ether to explode and scatter, leaving only a vacuum, and the transformed survivors to fight over the few scraps left behind. Our expedition into the Void, back in ARR from the Crystal Tower, confirms this. Apparently, Noah's data established that the Void is indeed an ether vacuum. So the Ascians blew it. But they've got it right 7 times since. Apparently, the ethereal lifestream of each shard is attached to the source, our homeworld, like to a reservoir at the heart of the multiverse. As Solace explains it, when a shard becomes over-aspected to any element or pole, the excess flows downstream towards the source. The dimensional membrane between the source and shard filters this ether through, and we begin to experience in Eorzea some natural effects of common aspect to the element. The first calamity was one of wind, and would therefore have been preceded by hurricanes or similar events of escalating severity. When the target shard has been primed with this over-aspecting condition, a single sufficiently catastrophic event on the source of the same aspect can force this flow of ether to crash back upon itself or otherwise cause the membrane to crack. Like a broken dam, this causes everything upstream to be rapidly swept away into the source. The shard, everything and everyone within it is ripped apart by this torrent and rejoined to the source as atomic particles of ether. This happened first, apparently, to the 5th shard, long before our recorded history, but probably about 10,000 years ago. Then to the 12th with lightning, the 2nd with fire, the 3rd with earth at the fall of Allag, the 6th with ice, the 10th with water at the climax of the War of the Magi, and the 7th with an over-aspecting of astral ether at the fall of Dalamud, just a handful of years now past. This leaves only 5 shards, seemingly the 1st, the 4th, the 8th, 9th, and 11th, not counting the wasted 13th shard known to us as the Void. The Ascians failed with the 13th then because they did not invite a corresponding calamity upon the source during the Flood of Darkness. We discussed the effects of light or umbral ether in the previous video, so how exactly did the alternate future 8th calamity take place that Grahatir and the future Ironworks have been working so hard to reverse? It seems simple at a glance. The first shard is massively overpolarized to umbral, so umbral ether overflows to the source. The etherochemical weapon Black Rose seems to work by similarly polarizing ether in its victims to umbral, and in spreading out of control through the source at the same time as the incoming flood of light, it would fracture the barriers betwixt worlds and cause another rejoining. In the latter patches of Stormblood, the Sharlayans observed umbral polarization across Hydaelyn in a phenomenon described as a thinning of the ether. So we can see that the flood of light was affecting the source. But the question remains, how? Because unlike astral ether, or depolarized ether of any element as that which caused the past 7 calamities, the significant attribute of umbral ether or light is that it doesn't flow at all. Out in the empty, the land is still full of ether. It's just completely coagulated, suspended in place. The flood of light wasn't a wave of umbral ether flooding across the land, it was the threshold of a chain reaction, throwing everything to the umbral pole, seemingly caused by Eden. So if this ether doesn't flow, how does it move to the source and meet the conditions for a calamity? Maybe this is another function of Eden as yet undiscovered, but for now, it's an open question. Another good question is how the Ascians thought they were going to get about restoring the void to the point that it too could be rejoined. Given that they remained committed to the rejoinings for 10,000 years or more since their failure here, they must have at least had faith that it was possible. Perhaps the Oracle of Darkness holds the key to that conundrum. We'll talk more about the Ascians and their origins in Amarot next time when we explore the genesis of Hydaelyn and Zodiark. We'll also try to touch on the curious topic of soul sundering and its ramifications for the player character and other denizens of the source. Today, I think we've covered more than enough to give us pause for thought. If you have any further questions about the Calamities and rejoinings or any points you think we might have omitted here, feel free to leave a comment below. So thank you in particular to my patrons for making this content possible. If you are a patron, give me a ping on Discord so I can give you access to the patron channel on the community Discord, where I like to share my creative process, consider requests, and discuss feedback. I would also like to start crediting patrons at the end of each video, but I don't want to dox anyone, so shoot me a message on Discord or via email to tell me how you would like your name displayed. If you don't see your name on the next video, then it's simply because I don't yet know how you prefer to be credited. If you'd like to consider becoming a patron to help mitigate demonetization and afford me more time to work on lore videos, you can find a link in the description. Finally, don't forget to check out my first Amino story on the lore of Eden's Gate and follow me there. I'm still experimenting with the format, but I have some really fun ideas for the next one. Thank you all for watching, subscribe, and ding the bell, and I'll catch you next time.